Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Triad Travelogues. I am Richard, coming at you today from the outskirts of Shanghai, China, to bring you the Triad Travelogues podcast. We have a very special guest today. All our guests are special, but this guest is especially special. This is Darren from Scotland. Darren is living in China right now, but I believe he's leaving next week to go to Australia. He's been living here for what, a year, right?
3.5 years.
Oh, 3.5 years. He's been living here for a really long time. We're gonna talk. We're gonna talk a little bit today about travel. Darren has a pretty interesting life story. Before he came to China, he was working as a mortician. He worked
By day.
By day. He was working as an escort by night, right? And now he's working in China teaching ESL. And I guess he's gonna, and I don't know what he's going to be doing later, but I figured he'd be an interesting guy to have come on and talk a little bit about travel and life and all that good stuff.
I love doing the weird and wonderful, as you've already said. I was a funeral director and an embalmer, and I was a prostitute. And even though I like doing the weird and wonderful, just because I like to see the world that some people don't get to see.
Sure.
But I do enjoy the shock value that comes with telling people that I was an embalmer and telling people that I was a prostitute. And that shock value had ran dry with my family, and I was getting bored. And I saw the job to come to China to teach, and I said, I know it's going to shock them. I had no intention of actually coming to China. I just wanted to apply and say, oh, look. But my family's reaction at this point was, China, you won't do that. You're too scared to do that. And I'm stubborn, and I was like, yes, it would. And now the jokes went too far, and I've been here for 3.5 years. So it was initially a joke that I couldn't back out of. It was at the airport. I turned to my sister and said, this was just meant to be a joke. I didn't want to leave Scotland, but I'm glad I did. It did open up a lot of doors for me.
Well, it's an interesting contrast. I mean, going from, you said embalmer. I don't know what the difference is between like a mortician, because I said mortician, right? Is that not the correct term? Is that the correct term?
Well, there's a lot of names for it. The ones that we use in Scotland, because mortician I think is more American. In the UK, we say funeral director and embalmer, and the difference between those two is that a funeral director kind of organises everything, and the embalmer solely sanitises and beautifies the body, makes it look and cleans the body, makes it look good for the families to see. Mortician, I think, seems to be a catch-all term. You're a funeral director and embalmer, but it seems only Americans use that.
Gotcha. But you did both of those things. You were a funeral director and also an embalmer. So
embalmer, yes.
that was that your first job? I mean, was that your first line of work?
No, my very first line of work was boring stuff like bartending and call centre. It was boring for me. I'm sure it's not boring for everyone. And I decided I want to get into the more face-to-face role, which is impossible in the UK unless you have initial experience in a face-to-face role. And they were wanting me to do volunteering in charity shops, but that's what everybody does, and I hate doing that sort of thing. So not charity work, just what everyone else does. I love charity. But I volunteered at an apiary. I was a beekeeper for quite a while before going to funeral directing, and then escorting was later down the road.
You were a beekeeper. So that's interesting too. I mean, that's not as shocking, but it's definitely something that most people have not had experience with. Like I worked at, Taco Bell when I was a kid, I worked in retail and food service and, but a beekeeper, that's interesting,
Yes, I want to retire as a beekeeper. That's definitely my retirement plan. Just beekeeping, selling honey.
You still want to do that?
So far, but I mean, what I want to do and what I think I am changes and chops and changes all the time. So
sure. I mean, that's good. That's good because that's the opposite of the rigidity that you're talking about. It's good. I think people need to change because people latch onto things, or people latch onto, especially jobs, the things that they like and the things that they do and the people that they associate with kind of become their identity. And so people try to to keep those things because they associate it with their identity. And so it's like, when you lose certain things, you lose your job, or, you feel like you're changing. It's like, it's hard for some people because it feels like they're losing themselves, because it's so associated with who they think they are. So I think it's good to not be rigid,
Yeah, and I like the idea that a part of my character, I still see myself as an embalmer. I'm still capable of doing it, and change. I understand the point of view that if you change job, maybe they lose that part of you, but it's still a part of your past. I always
Right.
was an embalmer, and that's never going to change. And I think I love change so much because I am not only going to be an embalmer. I'm collecting all these aspects or characters that I have, like the embalmer, the beekeeper, the escort, the teacher, and whatever happens to come next. So I think I would say it adds to character opposed to losing, in my point of view. The point where I kind of broke away from that and went crazy, as you might say, doing all these strange jobs, is I remember at school, I was a geek at school, and I still do. I'm constantly wanting to learn. I'm learning to read Braille or whatever. I'm currently crocheting. I'm constantly wanting to learn
You're
things.
crocheting.
And yes, while we're waiting, I'm crocheting a little hat for my student.
My mom crochets. She's like 50.
I love crocheting. I've got over there in the cupboard. I've crocheted a cat, a toy cat. But anyway, it's one of my hobbies. I have many. But I was at school and I had straight A's. I could go to any university that I would like to, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. And my guidance counsellor was saying, "Do law, do medicine." And I was like, "Why?" Like, I've never shown interest. But then I found out my school's stats go up the more people that go to study medicine and law, and I realised she wasn't doing it because of me. She was doing it for the school to be boosted up in reputation, and I just went no. And from then on, I kind of went off the rails because I realised that everybody that I knew was guiding me for their own benefit opposed to what I wanted to do.
So how old were you when you started doing the beekeeping thing?
I was maybe right after I graduated. 18, 19, I'm not sure, around about there.
How do you get into something like that? Like, what do you...
I was looking for volunteering, and at that point, I go through obsessions, as I said, with Braille, like crocheting and stuff, and at that point it was bees and beekeeping, and I found that there was an apiary that was near my house, and I applied for a job initially, thinking I would just get in, but they said that they only work on a volunteer basis, which probably was not a lot of profit, and I said, can I volunteer here? And that felt my requirement for volunteering, which rather than doing a charity shop.
Gotcha.
That was that.
So were you ever paid for it, or was it like just strictly volunteer?
Strictly volunteering.
Strictly volunteering. Okay. That's
Yes.
So that's interesting. Beekeeping. So you're just, it's kind of like keeping like cows, except they're bees, right? I mean, right? Like
it's easier than you think, and it's not as dangerous, which I initially thought as you think. You have to like handle swarms. I never did, but you can. But it's really, really easy, and it's really, I don't know, fascinating. I love how bees work. They have their own society. Bees actually have mortician bees. There's bees that are assigned as mortician bees to carry out the dead bees. They have a full society. It's amazing. I love it. I think the most interesting part of it, there was this strange man at the apiary, and he loved bees more than I did. He was the one I went to for information, but he was very proud to say he wasn't just a beekeeper, he was a wasp keeper in his own house. And I don't know if you have this in America, but there's a plastic thing you can put CDs on. It piles up. It's usually like a spike in the middle, and you put the
right. They're called
the
spindles.
CDs on it.
Spindles.
Yeah,
yeah,
something like that. So, and he created like a what do you call it? An enclosure for a wasp, and he made the wasp hives, and he like grew all these wasps, and there was lots of them in this little plastic container in his house, and he trained them so that he would put his finger in sugary water, and the wasps would like eat off his finger because they seen him as a food source rather than a threat. And that was probably the strangest thing in the beekeepers.
Okay.
But I used to think one party. Sorry.
I'm curious about. I understand the business part of keeping bees, right? I mean, people do it generally because there's money in it, right? So, What about keeping wasps? Like, what kind of? It's just for fun.
Just a hobby. Yeah, for him it was fun. But I would always think all you have to do is knock over that plastic enclosure that you've made, and they will swarm your house, because it was in his bedroom. So
we're talking about like that big, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess that's not that bad, but it seems kind of cruel, right? Because those wasps don't want to be stuck in there.
Yeah. I think it is quite cruel. I don't really know the need for wasps. Like, what do they need? If
I have no
there's maybe
idea.
a food source is enough. It's not. I don't know if they need exercise, or I don't know if they were lacking anything. But yeah, it's a hobby out there that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Any use wasp keepers out there?
Yeah. I'd never thought about that. So I guess it makes sense, though. There's something for everybody, you know? So,
Yes.
so you went from that to being an embalmer. So what is the story about that? You got involved with that for the shock value, or you actually were interested in, like, you know, dealing with dead bodies, or, you know, what was it that I guess that drew you to that?
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been attracted to a job for shock value. I just enjoy whatever shock value is attached to it. How I got into funeral directing and embalming is I was kind of lost, didn't know what to do. And my grandfather passed away around the same time, and at this point I was working in like a call center, as well as the beekeepers, and I wanted to contribute to my grandfather's funeral. But I also wanted to know what I was paying for and what all these processes were, because I've heard about how funerals can be too expensive and can trick you into paying a lot more than what it should be. And when I was trying to learn as much as I could from the funeral director during my grandfather's funeral, I got interested and asked, how can I get into this trade? And worked my way up from there.
Wow. Did they hire you? You just said, how can I get involved? And they hired you?
They didn't. They recommended funeral directors that was looking for an assistant, and as soon as I went in, I stated my intentions of I want to be an embalmer, which apparently is rare for someone young to do that, and he kind of took that under his wing to I want to train this boy. I don't know if he ever had the opportunity to do so, but I've heard of people spending so much time trying to get into funeral directing, and I seem to have just skipped into the funeral directors and right into the mortuary. I don't know how I did it.
So what kind of people do you generally encounter in a working environment like that? Like, you know, what kind of people are attracted to that job? Did you meet people that were similar to you?
They're not what you expected. I expected like the Addams family sort of people, but they're people from all walks of life, and I think the only thing that I would say consistently connects them is their sense of humour. They have a dark sense of humour.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think it's a coping mechanism for a lot of the time. And the way, because the whole like rumours where you speak to dead bodies, that is true. And it's not because you think you can talk back. I did it, and I don't even think it's a coping mechanism. I think it's just talking out loud. Like when I was embalming, say, an old woman, and I lifted a leg to see a cold sore that I had to clean up, I'd be like, oh, Helen, how am I going to clean this up? What did you do here? Like, I used to like complain to them, like, Jesus, sort of thing. So there's a lot of kind of those coping methods is the consistent aspect of each funeral professional.
Right. But they probably already had that sort of dark sense of humor, right? I mean, before,
Yes.
because they get involved with a profession like that, so it's probably, it's maybe niche is not the right word, but it certainly is something that wouldn't attract, like, most people. So
Yes. I was going to say, I think there's still a learning curve to it, because I think I had a dark sense of humour, or I enjoyed dark humour, but not to the extent of what they would say. Like, I feel people going into it with dark sense of humour would still be taken aback, but you grow to kind of understand that this is how people are coping. Because like when I first went into funeral directing, I was having nightmares, like vivid nightmares, because the dead bodies you see on TV are not what dead bodies look like in real life. All these models that are just lying on the floor in CSI saying they're dead. It's horrific, and I don't think people have actually seen what a dead body looks like, because it's not Walking Dead style zombie, but it's not, as I said, CSI model on a slab.
Right.
There's like an in-between, which I think is a lot more haunting, because the Walking Dead zombies, you almost don't recognise them as human, so it's almost detached yourself as a being, but there's like a middle ground that's really, really, it gets hard. It's hard to get used to.
Right.
Yes.
So how long did you do that? Like, how long were you in that field?
I was there 2 years. 2 years.
2 years.
More or less 2 years. I would have to check my CV.
Okay, so the prostitution thing, I guess that's interesting. That because that
Yes.
so we're moving further and further away from things that most people have or would do. Because the beekeeper thing is like most people aren't beekeepers and most people have never done that. But then you jump over to like embalming, and then it's like probably a lot less people would be involved with that, you know? And then the prostitution is like even less people, you know? So it's like we're moving further and further away from what would be considered normal, like a normal thing to be attracted to want to do. And from what I understand, you got into that because you wanted to, because a lot of people get involved. I mean, I don't know this because I don't know anything about that industry, but from what I understand, there are people who get involved with the sex trade, not just prostitution, but also with like exotic dancing, you know, stripping, and because they have drug problems, because they need the money, because they're forced into it. This is the kind of stuff that you hear from. This is the stereotype that people have, you know, and I don't know how true those things are, but
I think, because there's a focus on that, I think that's why it might have a negative stereotype. It only recently came out to my mum that I told her that I was the prostitution, and it's only because, do you know the TV show Big Brother?
Yeah.
I was in the final round for that, and I told them everything, and I was like, if I get on TV, which I'm going to hear about the next couple of days, my mum's going to know, and I would rather I told her than the TV did, and I did, and she was okay at first, and then when I went away, she told my sister. They went ballistic, and it took my sister to go and see a priest in her work. She works in a hospice, so the chaplain, she spoke to him about me being a prostitute, and I didn't really think he would give much good advice, but his advice was, Donna, the way you see prostitution is people being forced into that position, whereas Darren, as far as I can tell, is chosen and says that he enjoyed that job. And he was like, if I go out and have a one-night stand, because he's a chaplain, not a priest, he can, then I wouldn't mind being paid for it. And my sister then changed her mind. And my mum's dramatic and got her own issues, but my sister's completely fine with it.
When did you tell your mom this?
Wait a minute, let me think. Maybe April just passed, because that's when I've just done the Big Brother thing.
Oh, okay.
April just passed.
So were you on? You were on the show, or you were on the like pre-show? Like you're actually on the show.
I wasn't on the show. I finished the auditions, and they called a group of us into a room and gave us all contracts, saying basically, congratulations for getting this far. You are very close to being selected into the house, but please be aware that you most likely won't get famous, you most likely won't get rich, and you could end up mentally disturbed after this. Here's why, and lists every reason as to why you could have a mental breakdown. People stop me in the street, people might not like you, people will notice you, won't always be positive attention. It's and she had to sign that and send it off. That was how far I got. I never got in.
But you sent it off. You signed it and sent it off.
I did. Yeah. I was, because I've got mental health issues anyway, so bring it on. I was like, mentally traumatized, tick, been there, said then.
They do that for purely legal reasons, though. They don't care about your mental health, man. They put you in that house and they intentionally antagonize you and like pitch you against other people and try to get you to break. Like they don't care about your mental. They want you to break down. Man, that's interesting. Because
the questions they asked me in the interview was all basically who would hate Darren. Basically, they were asking me about my religious beliefs and how would I deal with people maybe who are strictly Catholic, and the prostitution, and what happens with people who are a bit more prudish. So that was all the questions were.
But those questions are used for them to manipulate social situations so that they can get you in. Like, if you you told them your religious affiliation, right? Like, you told them all those things. So then what they're going to do is they're going to say, oh, this guy is, you put Satanist? Is that what you put? Or we haven't even gotten into that. Satanist. We're going to get into that. We'll get into that. So you said I'm a Satanist. So they're like, oh, this is good, because then they can go to someone else's file, someone who is like, I don't know, a Protestant or like a Catholic or whatever, some extreme
Yes.
person on the other and just pitch you guys against each other. Okay, so the prostitution. So you were involved with that in your home country, yeah?
Yes.
In Scotland. So is it legal in Scotland?
Well, it's not. This is the loophole that you need to learn when you're an escort, because prostitution's illegal.
Okay.
I'm an escort. Because it's illegal in Scotland to sell sexual acts. I can't say I'll have sex with you for X amount of money. But as an escort, you hire my company, an hour of my time for whatever reason, and whatever happens in that time is merely coincidental. It's not necessarily connected to what you're paying for.
Gotcha.
So
It's the same. It's the same in the States, I think.
Yeah, so it's a loophole you basically work in. You work in a loophole.
So how do you get involved with something like that? Like, how do you get a job? You just start putting ads out?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It all happened because I have a best friend who eventually got into the business in a different way. He was my driver. We went down to see his ex-girlfriend and their daughter at a theme park, and the ex-girlfriend was a horrible person. And he likes to annoy her and like tell her stories that will make her get angry. And one of the stories he told her was like, yeah, I'm an escort now. I'm having sex with lots of women for money. And she was going, what? No way. And while they were having this induced argument, I was in the back of the car going, how do people actually do that job? And I looked on the website, the internet, found plenty of websites advertising it. I was on a website called, I don't know, should I mention the website? Was that you're allowed to do that?
I don't care at all.
Okay. It was a website called sleepyboy.com.
Sleepyboy.com. Yeah, we're advertising for it. Sleepy Boy.
I'm not on the.
We had back pages. I don't think they're still around anymore, but there was a place called Back Pages. You could hire like prostitutes. I think they got shut down though.
Well, there's lots of websites. I don't know if just in the UK, and they charge you for putting an advert up. But sleepyboy.com did not charge, which is why I advertised there. And the men that were the men that were on the website were extremely model-like, muscle-bound, and I was like, I am not going to get hired. No one's calling me. So I put myself the cheapest on the website because initially I was doing it as a social experiment. So I wasn't just a prostitute, but I was the cheapest one on the website. And
what does that mean? What does that mean? What is the cheapest? We're talking about like per hour. What is that? What is cheap?
Yeah, I was £50 an hour, which is 500 kwai, maybe $100, maybe.
Okay.
So I was a wee cheap hooker.
That's cheap.
And I would differ if you wanted maybe 2 hours, 100. Overnight was 200 and pounds. This is, and anything special we would discuss when we're there. We wouldn't want any evidence of that. Would be, and that was that. And I put the website up, the advert up, and I started getting calls. And my friend, who acted as my kind of security and driver, like he would drive me to places, and I would say, "Oh, my brother's outside. He knows I do this. He's helped me. We're saving up to go on holiday, just so they know. Don't kill me because my brother's going to be in 2 minutes if I'm over the time." But my first job was the most terrifying job in the world, and it's because he didn't know, and also the guy was a psychopath. I don't know if we have enough time to tell the story because it's
tell the story. What time is it? It's what, 3:00? Yeah, it's good. Tell the story. I mean, what is this like a novel length story about a bad client?
It's a creepy client. I'll let you know.
Tell.
I'll tell you. Okay, so no one knew I was an escort, and that my first job was alone. So if this man did kill me, there was no evidence of me going away. I would have been gone forever. I would have been a vanished case. So I asked him to pick me up in a supermarket's car park. And at this point, I wasn't very adept at the small talk that I would be as an escort. I just got in the car. I had a different name. My name was Aaron Matthews. And we sat in silence for the majority of the drive. This man literally just wanted to give me a blowjob. That was it. £50. He would give me a blowjob. And I was like, that's an easy thing to start off with. So we were driving down the dark road, going to a different town.
At night?
And at night.
Okay.
And eventually he turned to me and said, "We're not going to my house. We're going to my mum's house." Already alarm bells are ringing. And he makes it worse by saying, "It's okay, my mum's dead. She's no longer in the house." And I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Oh, Jesus." So anyway, we drove all the way there. And this house was not touched from when his mum lived there. It was like something from the 19-somethings. It was... Nothing had been moved. There was letters still in place. It was scary. So we went into the living room, and he sat in a chair and thought it was necessary to let me know that this is my mum's chair. And there was a moment of silence as I was like, okay. And then he said, "So would you like porn on?" And I was like, okay. And he put on some straight porn. And he went on at it. But that's not the scariest part of the night. He had a cuckoo clock in his mum's living room. And the song, do you know the song Scarborough Fair?
Yeah.
Have you been to Scarborough? Yeah. So while he was down doing what he wanted to do, the cuckoo clock chimed, and it was do 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 down the Scarborough Fair tune. He kept grip of the asset that got me the job. Kept grip of it, looked up at me, and sang, "Have you been to Scarborough Fair?" The full song to me while he was keep my tight grip, and I was just going through my head like, this is it. This is literally my last moment. I'm watching a middle-aged man giving me oral sex, gripping my dick, singing Scarborough Fair to me, but it finished. I finished, and he watched me shower, and then took me home and dropped me off. I seen him drive away into the distance, and I went, "Oh my God, this is the most exciting job I ever had. I love it." And then that was me. I was hooked. The sex worker industry actually do a very, very good job of looking out for each other. One of the things that's a requirement when you sign up for sleepyboy.com, at least, is something called uglymugs.com. And you basically put your email address in. And I still get emails from them to this day. And what they do is if you ever have a bad experience as an escort, you contact Ugly Mugs with their phone number, their contact details of the person who contacted you, what they did, with a few details maybe about appearances, and that goes to every escort in the UK. So I received emails, "Glasgow, this number threatened someone, looked like this, there's the situation, avoid them," basically. So I never had to ever use one of them. Some of them had funny stories. There was like a woman prostitute who reported that a man was come to do an in-call. I never did these, but they would come to her house. And she opened the door to him standing naked, masturbating and climaxing on her doorstep, and then running away in his car and driving off. So like, there's funny ones like that, and there's also maybe a lot more scarier ones. But they do a good job, since the police are probably not going to give you much help because of the business, the area of work you're in. But they do a lot of good job of looking after each other. Yeah. And they're lovely people. Whenever I did sex parties or anything like that, they're the most interesting people I've met.
So are generally, would you say that most people that get involved with that kind of work are doing it because they want to be involved with sex work? They just, people that like sex, or?
Yes, I've never met somebody who does not enjoy it. Everybody seems to genuinely enjoy it, and they don't need to lie to me. Like, I can understand maybe having to lie to the client because it's probably nothing's worse of a buzzkill than "I hate doing this" while going down on someone. So everybody I met loved the job. They loved the thrill. A lot of them had a very, very strong connection with their clients. Like, a lot of the women, female escorts have older clients, and she said that sometimes they just get called over to do sponge baths and stuff like that, and they have like an almost carer role with like an erotic twist. So a lot of them have a really good passion for it. There's activists that are wanting to fight for it as being recognised as a standard job, and it's a really interesting community, especially since there's a lot of people out there, escorts, that specialise. I was up for anything. I wanted to try. The only thing I don't like is pain, and other things as well, because you had to tick what you were interested in or willing to do. And there was people who only did things like, do you know what CBT is?
No.
Cock ball torture. I met someone at a sex party who does only that.
I've seen those things. They put like I've seen that.
Rods, sounding, it's called. Yeah, people like that. I do not do pain.
I've seen that. I've seen pictures of that. There's no way in hell that I could ever. I'm pretty open person, but no, but that's painful, right? I mean, that is painful, isn't it?
Don't do pain. Yes, I've never done it, but I just don't do pain. I do everything else, and I probably have. I've got plenty of stories, but I do not do pain. But there's people who love it, and they say there's a thin line between pain and pleasure. But I think apparently it's how your brain's wired. Like if they're close to each other and if they're cross, you like it. It's the same. Apparently, the part of your brain that recognises feet.
Yeah. I've heard that too.
Your erogenous zone, and if it's switched, there you go. Foot fetish. I've met plenty of those.
It's the most common fetish, I think. The foot fetish. Yeah. Man, so I think it's interesting to get this perspective because, you know, when I grew up, because I grew up in a very Protestant, very Southern Baptist home in Texas, and anything that's like anything related to sex, even like the pornography industry was just bad. It was just even just sex in general, like premarital sex is bad. And so, you know, growing up, you get this kind of idea about like morality, and it's interesting to look at it now as an adult because pornography is basically prostitution, right? I mean, but there's just a camera involved. There's not really much of a difference. Yeah. But it's legal. It's cool to like, if I can pay you to have sex with someone, or me, I guess, and then, as long as there's a camera involved, it just seems it seems very strange to me. But it's not a gray area. It's just like a little thing that you add to it, or maybe a couple of things that you add to it, and then it becomes this legal thing. Where you know where prostitution is like, there's a bunch of brothels here that are close to where, or they used to be here, close to where I live. A bunch of them. They're everywhere. You know, they light up the pink lights at night. They're all pink and red and purple. And they're gone now because last summer the police came and just busted them all. I actually went to one the other day to walk around, and it's empty. It's just an abandoned brothel, and the door was open. So I went in and just took some pictures. I think I'm going to write an article about it. It's creepy. It's a really creepy place, you know? It's just this empty. It's just this big space. Like, but it's just all these rooms with beds in them, but they're really dirty. It's the Chinese brothel.
Oh God, that sounds horrific.
But yeah, and it's like, you know, it's pitch black inside because all the electricity's off, and it's just kind of a creepy place. But the police came and busted all these places. Like literally, they came in and broke walls down, and they just busted all these places up. They all disappeared overnight. They just don't exist anymore, and they all kind of got boarded up, most of them. And I think it's an interesting thing to focus on for any country, for any police force, for any like judicial system. It's an interesting thing to focus on because it's a victimless thing, right? Like especially if you're going to look at pornography and say pornography is okay, when really the ramifications, the moral or social like problems that come along with that are really of no consequence, and it involves consent. Generally, I think it generally involves consent. So yes. I don't understand the legalistic thing, especially a country like China that's really like, no, it's bad. It's so bad that we have to go and bust these places down and make this big show of it. But you can go to like, you know, Amsterdam, or there's even parts of the States where it's legal.
And the UK.
Yeah. And I mean, there's little places, you know, all around the world where it's legal you don't have to do this, the weird wording, you know, it's like, oh, I'm an escort, I'll date you. And it's, you know, and I think if we just are honest and we just say, you know, people want sex, people are going to pay for sex, people are going to offer themselves for money to have sex, and we just admit it, it's going to happen regardless. There's not really a lot that you can do about it. I feel like it would be because it's such a non-issue. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's really not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
I feel like,
and whenever I asked about, I was going to say, and what if, because I always think you should always look at who's the victim, what damage is it doing? Because I think there's a lot of things that are illegal out there that you need to. There's no damage done. Like you can't say why other than your own personal morals, which should never come into law. And one of the things I think it's ignored, prostitutes are always focused on being forced into it and stuff like that or whatever. But no one asks the people who are hiring the escorts or prostitutes why they're hiring them. And in my opinion, from doing it for a while, a lot of them need this service, because a lot of the people, as you can imagine, that hired were lonely, or sometimes they just hired to speak to me and they just needed a bit of counsel, and it was a lot more informal than what maybe a counsellor could provide, because you're being like more of a friend but still had the distance that a counsellor would have. And
Yeah.
I feel like there is a vital service in it. It wasn't. I feel like a lot of the time it is seedy, if you that definition word, but there is a lot of aspects of the job that I thought were quite fulfilling. Like there was a lot of people that were just lonely, or there was people who had an aspect to themselves that they were really embarrassed about and they hated themselves for it. And maybe like meeting me and maybe like experimenting or like experiencing that sort of thing with me gave them like a height of confidence. And I think it comes back to, oh, it's evil, that kind of thing, because I'll get onto it in Satanism because it talks about it, is that if you stigmatize any part of anybody's kind of way they are, even if it's a bad thing, rather than going evil, it's going to make them close in on themselves. It makes them hide themselves. It can outpost. It just causes nothing but negative aspects. But if you recognise it's something that's maybe a bit unusual, and accept it about yourself, you'll be a lot happier. And I've seen people go through that process when I was their escort, and they came out the other end being more. I would revisit them, and every time I revisit them, they're more confident. They're telling me about how they're doing better in life because they don't feel like they're nobody because of maybe a specific unusual interest in a sexual area.
Yeah,
so I think there is a goodness to it.
No, yeah, I've read that. I've read that, sex workers find that there's a lot of counseling involved with their job, counseling or, whatever, helping people psychologically deal with things. And yeah, and I think that's something that, like you said, but it's evil. They point the finger. It's evil. It's evil. That it's a moralistic thing, and it goes back to this kind of weird relationship that humans have developed with sex, especially in the West. I don't know what it's like I've lived in Nepal, I've lived in China, in China. I feel like it's just not really discussed. People don't really talk about sex, but I feel like it's not as stigmatized as it is in the US. In the US, there's still a very church-oriented, religious-oriented culture that is very anti-sex in general. Just not even bringing in like homosexuality or bisexuality or like kinks or anything like that. It's just sex in general is bad. You should just be ashamed of your body. And a lot of that comes with that, I think it's the same thing with drugs. I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but it is a moralistic issue. Really, to most people, it's an issue of just morality. It's like, well, you shouldn't do damage to your body. The body is a temple, and you shouldn't put but it's not really your job or anybody's job to tell me what I can do with my body. If I want to sell my body, if I want to take drugs into my body, even if I want to destroy my body, it's none of your business. I feel
That's what I think with any sort of religious thing, people being judgmental. I thought like one of the things they always spout is that only God can judge, and I feel like are you not sinning by taking his job and judging people for things like doing damage to their body or for like homosexuality or anything like that? You're taking away job. Is God not going to be angry because you're the one doing his judging for him? Like, I'm not affecting you, sort of thing. Like, let me do what I want.
Yeah. I guess it's natural to go onto the religion thing now because we're talking about morals. And so I think the reason I started talking to you is because we met in a WeChat group. WeChat, for those that don't know, is like the Chinese equivalent to Facebook. And there's a lot of these weird groups. And we met in a group. I met Darren in a group of racists. I mean, they are like a lot of dudes from Africa that are like African nationalists, and they're just like hated white people, man. I'm not in that group anymore. I actually left that group because I just couldn't deal with their just constant negativity. But I don't remember the exact circumstances, but we were talking about I guess Islam, and we were talking about Christianity, and you had mentioned that you were a Satanist, which I found interesting because you don't meet a lot of Satanists anywhere, but especially not in China in some random expat group. And I'm not religious. I'm not a religious person. I'm anti-theist, I guess, but I find Satanism to be an interesting thing because it's so like, it's just a word, I think, because I grew up Baptist, so the word is just, it has a connotation to it. Maybe it shouldn't, but it has that like, oh, it's like, you know, controversial. Not controversial is not the right word. It's dirty. It's bad. You know, it's scary.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm curious how you got into, you know, and you're not like a theistic Satanist, right? Are you?
No, not a theistic Satanist. I'll explain.
Okay.
For the people out there that don't know Satanism, there's a lot of branches to it, but the main kind of two categories is theistic Satanism, which is worshipping Satan as a literal entity that you believe he exists, he's out there, and you're offering up prayers to him and such, in the same way that maybe Christians would God. And then there is Levian Satanism, or like non-theistic Satanism, where the base way I try and explain to people is that they follow Satan in the way that Buddhists follow Buddha. Buddhists don't worship Buddha, as far as I know, but they do follow in his teachings and his footsteps. Levian Satanists don't believe that Satan was a real person, but they see him as a very powerful and important symbol or icon for a lot of people. They see Satan as the person who was cast out by God and basically didn't conform with God's way of thinking, so was cast out, the ultimate outsider. And there's a lot more kind of detailed doctrines, but it's basically embracing that kind of outsider in you, embracing the good and the bad, trying to teach you to do your own research, question everything, even question Satanism, which is what I do, and I'll get onto that in a minute. And don't ever let other people conform you. And there's lots of different branches to it, but it's basically seeing yourself as God, is what they like to say. Focusing on yourself. You can't help anyone else until you help yourself. And kind of aspiring to be that person that even if you're cast out, you can be quite powerful.
Sure.
It's quite an interesting religion. I would suggest reading the Satanic Bible, whether you're interested or not, because it's helped me so much. But I have a very unique point of view of it, because I am also quite theistic, just I don't worship Satan. My mum's a witch, or a Wiccan, and she's got a lot of pagan friends, and I do believe there is something, whether it's energy or that sort of thing. I do have a belief in the supernatural, the spiritual, I would say. So I'm maybe a spiritual Satanist, but I think the main philosophy, regardless of what you believe in, of Satanism, of putting yourself first and not conforming and being you, is very important, and it's what I follow.
Do you believe in Satan, the devil? Do you believe in that entity?
No, because I think I don't think there's like an evil. I don't think there's an evilness in the world. I think I feel like there's maybe like different energies, and there's like, because the way I kind of put it is that I feel that spirituality is very embedded in the human mind, right, and who people are. And I always think it's interesting that countries all over the world, when they had no contact for each other, built this aspect of spirituality. And a lot of people say they were explaining what they didn't understand. They were just trying to think of a meaning. But it's very unusual that they all had similar meaning, ideas of like gods that represented aspects of life. It's very, very similar, and there's no one out there that thinks that the gods are in the ground or anything like that. They're all very similar ideas, and I think that is because they were in tune with something. And it's the same way if you walk into a silent room, you will be able to detect if this room was right after a funeral, a very somber atmosphere, and this, or if it was waiting for a result for something, an anticipation, you'll be able to pick up these certain things. And I think that is an energy that's going about us. So I don't think literal deities exist, but I do think there is energies out there that are maybe not detected. But there is a lot of clues in science now when you look at quantum mechanics and stuff like that our focus and different energies might actually exist out there that we're not fully aware of at the moment.
Yeah. I agree with that to a certain point. I think, are you familiar with Carl Jung?
Yeah, the psychologist.
Yeah, he wrote a lot about what he called the collective unconscious, which is kind of this thing that we're all sort of tapped into. And he mentions a lot about, he wrote a ton of stuff, and he mentions a lot about, you were talking about that different parts of the world that were not in contact with one another, they had similar ideas, but they didn't just have similar ideas. They had similar symbols, like concrete physical symbols that had very similar meanings. They had similar stories. They had similar their whatever, the fables or whatever you want to call them. They're like, if you look at the books, like the holy books, the Bible is very similar to the Mahabharata, the Hindu book, which is based on the Vedas, and they have very similar stories. The symbology is the same. And it is very interesting, especially considering some of them honestly they didn't even know that they existed. So there is some kind of thing that we're connected to.
I think so as well. I think the only time religion has went down the bad route and been seen as, like, a lot of people see religion as evil, it's became this evil concept. And I think it's because people who were a wee bit more manipulative back in the day seen this vulnerability, this like maybe sense of God, and how people followed this innate thing, and they were thought, I know how to use this, and someone just walked forth and said, by the way, this is what God wants us to do now. That's just my theory.
Right.
But I think that's where religion then spouted into something bad.
No, I agree with that. If you look at some of the history of L. Ron Hubbard, are you familiar with L. Ron Hubbard?
Yes, Scientologist.
Yeah,
or the creator.
Well, he was the creator of the religion. Yeah, and he was a science fiction writer prior to writing. I guess he was writing science fiction, and then he basically decided that he wanted to kind of come up with this sort of, it's this kind of a pseudo psychology thing called Dianetics, and he wrote this book. Have you ever read Dianetics? It's nuts.
I've not read it, but I have heard of it. It's something I would quite like to read, but not yet.
It's interesting. It's very difficult to read, and it's difficult to read intentionally. Like, L. Ron Hubbard was a genius. Like, he was a very intelligent man. He was a very smart con artist, and he knew what he was doing. He also was on a lot of drugs, and I think he was tapped into something. Like you were saying that people are there are just some people that are susceptible to influence more than other people, and then there are certain people that are able to identify those people that are susceptible, and they just have an innate ability to manipulate them. And people like L. Ron Hubbard or Marshall Applewhite or Applegate, the Heaven's Gate guy.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've actually been emailing them recently. I was reading about cults. Why was I reading about cults?
There's two of them, right? There's two of them left.
Yes,
yeah?
And I've been having an email conversation with them. I'm almost like pretending to kind of be interested in joining them, because I just wanted to see what information I can get out of them. But they're very open to speak. I didn't have to pretend. And it's just very odd. It's like I was asking them if they were sad that they were left behind, and they're very wholeheartedly they're happy to do the job they're doing, and they fully believe that they are on a spaceship somewhere.
Who's paying them?
Or something. I don't know. I couldn't get in. They were very vague with a lot of questions I asked, but the way I was phrasing it as. He was like, "Oh, you should have followed the teachings," and I was like, "But he said there was one chance with this Halley-Bopp comet. There's one chance, and it never in my lifetime will I have that chance. It's not fair that I've missed out this opportunity to go on this comet." And they were just like, "Yes, I understand." And I eventually said, "Look, is there anything I can do to help you?" And he said, "We'll contact you soon." And then that was the last thing I heard, because I switched jobs and lost that email. So
interesting. That whole thing is really very interesting, because I've talked about. I think I've talked about this before on this channel. I'm not sure if I have. Is the decompartmentalization that's required for somebody to hold contradictory beliefs in order to manipulate somebody effectively? You have to know that you're manipulating them. It's really difficult to manipulate a group of people, especially a large group of people, if you're not familiar with the tactics that you're using. And if you are familiar with those tactics, then at some level you understand that you do need to use fraud and lies in order to manipulate people. So it's like people like David Miscavige, the guy that took over after L. Ron Hubbard died, or Jim Jones.
Yes.
They somehow, because Jim Jones died. Jim Jones killed himself for what he believed, but he also used manipulative tactics to get people to follow him. He used like sleep deprivation, and he used psychological tactics, and he was he knew what he was doing. And so at some level, he understood that it was bullshit. At some level, he understood that what he was doing was wrong, or at least what he was doing was a lie. But on some other level, he must have had some kind of belief in what he was doing, because he was willing to die for it. The same with David Miscavige. Like, I really do think that he believes. I saw a documentary about him, and what somebody that used to hold a high level in the church was asked, "Do you think David Miscavige really believes in Scientology?" And the guy did not skip a beat. He said, "Absolutely, he believes." But at the same time, he's using these very specific psychological tactics to manipulate people. So he holds these two ideas at the same time. He knows it's true, or he thinks it's true, but he also knows it's not true. And those things are able to exist simultaneously. So there's kind of this weird deep, like, compartmentalization that's going on.
Yeah. I always wondered, like, I always thought there was maybe three options: that they were manipulating people, or they actually believed it was true, or they knew it was, because there's been lots of times, even in my youth, I've told a lie, and I wanted to believe the lie so much, or I was into the lie so much that I eventually believed it myself. Back when I was younger, I didn't have a PlayStation 2. I pretended I did, to the extent where I invited one of my friends over to bring a PlayStation 2 game to play it on my PlayStation 2, and I didn't have a PlayStation 2, but I loved living in that world where I did, because I was a part of something. And I always thought maybe, like, Applegate and those cult leaders or religion leaders, they don't believe it, but they like that world enough to pretend to believe it enough to be like, because I knew I didn't have a PlayStation 2, but I got so into it that it was almost like a half belief of mine. So I wonder if it's they prefer that view of the world over the very harsh logic of the world that they know is true.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I've always been really fascinated by cults, because I kind of grew up in a cult. I mean, not a specific cult, but I grew up in the cult of, like, Christianity, or Southern Baptist Christianity, and so I've always been kind of fascinated by how that works, because, like, 900 plus people committed suicide and killed their children at Jonestown.
Yes.
I don't remember how many the Heaven's Gate were. I think there were 30 something, right?
Yes, but if you go into the Heaven's Gate website, which I would suggest anybody to do,
I've seen
and
it.
you see the last interviews with those people just before they commit suicide, they're happy. They're like, "I'm so excited," and people say we've been brainwashed, but I know this is what I want to do. And they're genuinely happy for their life to end. And it's like a bizarre thing. Like, their dead bodies were found a couple of days later, but they were overjoyed at going to kill themselves.
Yeah.
It's also very creepy because they're all wearing the same clothes, and they had, like, was it $2.30 for the bus fare onto the flight?
I think it was like $2.25 or something.
Yes.
They had quarters, right? They had rolls of quarters in their pockets.
Yeah.
And a lot of them were eunuchs too. They had castrated themselves.
Yes.
But
because sex was one of the things that detaches yourself. I remember when I was reading it with a friend, and we were laughing over the fact that there was a story that they were wearing Nike trainers or sneakers, and they got a good deal because they bought them in bulk. And me and my friend were laughing at the fact that they got, like, a good deal for buying Nike trainers in bulk. I don't know if that was rumours. I'm trying to remember what the source of that information was, but
they were wearing the Nikes, though. They were wearing the Nikes. That's something that I don't know about the discount or what. I remember when I was a kid. I remember the videos. He called himself Doe, and I remember, and he had a shaved head, and it was a weird.
And he was always like this.
Yeah.
He's always going, "You're going to go like this, and you're going to go on the ship." And it's like very. His head was very. It was like a snake charming his charming his prey, and all of the followers also changed their names.
Yeah,
and they always ended in Odie, so it was like Rapodi or Somanoli. The two people I spoke to was like Lamode and Gabodi or something like that. They were all Odies.
Why didn't they get charged with something? Those two that were left behind, because they were aware that a mass suicide was going to occur, right? And they didn't do anything. Why didn't they get charged?
Because they've also not came forth and said anything. Like, I think there was another survivor, and he committed suicide later on after the thing. I don't know. I would need to look it up again, but I think they're maybe just underground, and maybe the Odi name, the Sabodi, is actually protecting them from any police action, or maybe the fact that they were under that level of brainwashing, as you might say.
Yeah.
They're fit. They're deemed unfit to be charged for that sort of thing. I'm not sure.
Man,
It's
that's wild. So I want to we'll wrap up the Satanism thing real quick. So you just, I'm curious how you got into it. You said your mom was a Wiccan, right? You grew up with that,
Yes.
yeah?
Yeah.
So
How I got into Satanism was I think I read about some sort of satanic panic in Africa or something like it was, or in America, that there was a satanic ritual, and it just made me think, I know Satanism, and I was like, oh, terrible Satanists. And then I thought, what is their actual beliefs? Like, have they got like a verse, 10 commandments, thou shalt kill every 5 weeks, and thou shalt steal everything they see? Like, what is their actual belief system other than worshipping Satan? There must be other rules to it than that. Where's the doctrine to say that you have to sacrifice? Where is that? So I went researching, I read it, and I was like, this actually rings very true for me. And in the Satanic Bible, it says if you're born a Satanist, you're not made a Satanist. But it's more touched upon that there's people that are always going to be outsiders, and you should embrace that sort of thing. So
yeah. So what does your mom think about your Satanism? Is your mom cool with it?
No. She. This is where it's kind of hypocritical, because my mum, being pagan, kind of rejects the kind of Christian view of spirituality, which includes Satan. Like in Wicca and pagan, there's no Satan. There is no Satan. In fact, in Wiccan or like pagan things, a lot of things like Pan, a lot of horned gods of fertility and stuff, are where Satan came from. So there is no Satan in her religion, but she still sees it as like a threatening thing. She asked me to get that book out my house. It's going to bring bad stuff in here. So she still has like a fear. And she was raised Catholic, so maybe it is something that's embedded in there, but that she still has a fear of Satan. The Exorcist or anything of that nature is probably the horror film she will not watch, because she does have a firm belief in demon possession and stuff like this.
You said that you had a very traumatic experience in China. And I know I've heard a little bit about, you've told me a little bit about it, but I don't know the whole story. So I think that'd be a good sort of way to close out, because I think it exemplifies some of the issues, well, with the Chinese culture, and then how people dealt with you. And so, yeah, tell me about this.
This is the event that has eventually pushed me to leave China. I had no intention of leaving China until this happened, and that's kind of put it in my mind. It turned me into a racist. Like, I have a curdling, festering hatred for this country. And as much as a lot of people complain about it, it's not fair to have this very unbiased. I feel hatred for people just in the street because I'm dealing with this, how I was treated in that time, and it's not fair. So that's why I'm leaving. But basically what happened was last October, during the October holiday, I had my best friend since I came here. We met here. He was a Canadian. Pascal was his name, and me and him and a few friends were drinking over the October holidays, and he fell asleep drunk, which was not unusual for him, and he basically never woke up. Is the main thing is that he gurgled, some stuff came out of his mouth, and I recognised that right away. It was too late at that point, but I tried to give him CPR. And it was how the Chinese dealt with this. I was in a panic, running up and down the stairs of my apartments, banging on doors. No one would come to the door when I was mentioning that my friend was dying in Chinese, and no one would come to the door even when I said my friend was dead in Chinese, because I thought that might have switched the motivation to help. I even got someone from the street, dragged him into the apartment, and said, "Look, my friend was dead on the couch. Someone was trying to resuscitate him." And he literally done the waving hand motion and like walked away, went back to looking in bins as if nothing had happened. From that point, I phoned the ambulance service, and my Chinese is okay, but not enough to answer medical questions. So I was able to tell him he's male, he's 27, he's da-da-da. But they were just unhelpful. There was no English option. When I said, "I don't understand, can you send an ambulance?" they were just repeated the same question again. Eventually, when I got the ambulance, they walked to the house, no matter how much I told them to run. They were doing the defibrillator.
Yeah.
But the language barrier probably made it a bit harsh as well. Rather than saying, look, I'm really sorry, he didn't make it, he was just turned and went, end of life. And which
Jesus.
was very fucking... a big hit. Then when the police arrived, they saw all the bottles, and with Pascal in the living room, and me in the bedroom, they were laughing and saying, oh, in Chinese, foreigners drink so much alcohol, and laughing in the presence of Pascal's body. And me and my friends, I had to almost like keep one of my friends on the bed because he thought I was going to try and fight them. They then kind of took us in as the suspects of killing Pascal, and I understand why. There was tables pushed over, smashed glasses in the panic to try and get him onto the floor to give him the CPR. And they kept us in for hours questioning us, and they would try and trip us up in our story, like the brown stuff that came out, the vomit sort of thing. They were like, there was no vomit. What do you mean? They were just trying to trip us up, because we went back to the house and it was there, but I was in such a fragile state, I was questioning myself. But then all that was done, and I went back to the house and slept. But I was woke up at 5 a.m. by the landlord saying I owed him 5 million kwai because I devalued his house by allowing my friend to die in it, my roommate. So then I had to go on the run away from China, the landlord, and I've been bouncing from house to house since then and job to job. The family came over and I had to show them around and help them deal with it, and the government was messing around with them so much that they didn't want to have a funeral. They were just going to cremate him, and the funeral director and me decided that wasn't going to happen, and I done a funeral for him here. I took him to the funeral home. I organised it. They were so uncooperative, and a lot of the time they were just laughing at me because I was a foreigner trying to direct this. But we had the funeral, and eventually they went home. And the problem I had that affected me the most is that I went into funeral director mode, and I was fine. I was crying and grieving, but it didn't hit me until everyone went back to normal, and then I started to suffer from very bad mental health issues. I had mental health issues coming here, but they got really, really bad. I went in a really bad place. And that's it. And I've decided that I just see Beijing as the hole that Pascal used to be in, and I need to leave. I need to go elsewhere now. So I'm going to go travel Australia with my wife and her boyfriend, as you know.
Damn. And then you come in with the wife and her boyfriend thing, and that's a whole nother. I feel like we could just do this forever. So okay, and that is horrible. I mean, it was just basically an asphyxiation, right? He choked on his vomit. Yeah.
We don't know, because the family did get a cause of death, but they never offered the information, and neither did I feel it was appropriate to ask for it. There wasn't. They were getting more and more angry at the Chinese government, and I didn't want to aggravate anymore by saying, so what happened? And they didn't offer it. But the theory, because Pascal wasn't good with drink. He used to drink, but if he got too drunk, he would start vomiting. He had a very bad cough, which the only theory I could build together is he may have had stomach ulcers, because he used to vomit profusely in his hangovers. He would have a bad cough, and he even with spicy food and stuff. And I think one of them maybe ruptured, because it wasn't vomit. It was, what I know as a funeral director, was coagulated blood. There must have been some sort of internal bleeding. Gotcha.
Damn. When did that happen?
The 10th of October 2018.
Oh,
no, 2017, sorry.
Oh, okay. So like a year. Well, it's a year ago.
Yeah,
about a year and a few months ago. So you just jumped around for a little while, and now when are you leaving China officially? Well,
the 15th of January, 6 days.
6 days. Are you excited?
Yes.
Do you feel happy?
Yeah, there's a lot of it. I'm excited because I'm going somewhere new with people that I know. I'm also scared in case, because I don't want to go too dark, but I'm in such a bad place now that because one of the things I've learned about that is how Chinese people treat death. Like, I've even heard Chinese people saying, I've never been to a funeral, and the reason why is because when they know someone who's died, only the very, very close family deal with it. Everyone else distance themselves because death is bad luck. They actually isolate their best friends and people because you will bring bad luck upon me. Like, I don't care about your grieving. But anyway, sorry, that's me going back into my hatred. But I also seen the reaction towards mental health issues, because mine's got really bad where I no longer could manage it on my own, which I always have been able to do. I had to go and seek help, and the stigma that's attached to it, people see things like depression as in the same line as homicidal, psychotic sociopath is. They see all these very minor things that a lot of people have as just crazy. They just have one word for it. And people tell me, don't tell your job because they'll fire you because of it. It's horrible, horrible thing. So eventually I was like, okay, nothing here can help me. I do think maybe getting away will help me. I'm scared in case going to Australia, nothing's changed. And then what? Like, what would I do to fix myself then? That's my worry. But positivity, I'm going to go there, I'm going to travel, I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to have no language barrier, kangaroos, I can buy things that are normal. So hopefully that's going to...
I think that the environmental change will be a big thing. I mean, like I also have some mental health issues, and this environment is not good. I mean, I haven't been through anything nearly as traumatic as what you've described, but just dealing with life day to day in China is, I mean, that's bad enough in itself in terms of, you know, pushing you over the edge, especially when you already have some issues just, you know, dealing with life in general. But that change in environment, especially a place like Australia, I think it'll be a lot better. It'll be a lot better for you.
I hope so, because a lot of people left after that. A lot of my friendship group left, understandably. But the people who have stayed here have managed to settle down back to normality. And there was a point where I was questioning, why have I not done that? Why is it? Why am I still in such a state?
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself how close I was to Pascal, for one, and also we lived together. Like, every house that I've been to since then, because I've literally jumped from house, I've moved 11 times since then, because I can't settle in a house, or I'm on a couch, or what, for whatever reason, many other things. So every day I wake up just reminded that I'm not, like, I'm on a couch right now. Why I'm on a couch? Because of that. Like, everything just reminds me of why I'm in where I am now. Like, so the change of environment, I think, is the best thing for it.
Right. Yeah.
But there is, I think, if anybody has listened to this, it's in China, there is things out there for people with mental health issues, which is great. If you use WeChat, there's something called Candle X. If you search them on Bing or Google, you see it. It's a mental health support group run by a Chinese woman, but there's a lot of foreign input, and that helped me so much. And there is psychiatric counselling help at, like, Sanlitan Hospital and the one at Dongjimen, Raffles. So just in case anyone's listening, that got me through a lot of stuff that I don't know where I would have been without them.
Okay, yeah, that's good to know. I had no idea that there was anything like that here. I have a video on this channel about traveling with mental health issues and some of the stigmas, some of the stuff you were talking about associated with whatever psychological disorders here in China. I think in Asia, in East Asia in general, but especially in China. Yeah. Okay, well, hey, thank you. Thanks for coming on. This was good. Good talk. Definitely. You have experiences that a lot of people haven't had or wouldn't want, or even would be not even know how to approach. And I think that's good. This is what I want. I want to have more people come on and talk about just, abnormal experiences, because I really don't think, I said this, when we started, I really don't think any normal people like do long-term travel. I don't think, I mean, people go on vacations and people like to travel, but I think most normal people, especially when you're over, 20, 25, I guess, I mean, you're younger than me, but I don't think typical normal average people decide to go to another country, live there for a few years, go somewhere else. And I am an advocate for travel. I'm an advocate for long-term travel. I think more people should travel. We have planes now, and we have the ability to do that. Multiculturalism is a thing that's not going to be stopped by anybody. Technology just makes it more realistic, more accessible to anybody. And so the focus that I have with this channel, I go a lot of different places on the channel, and it's a little bit chaotic right now. I'm trying to focus more, but I want to encourage people to travel. Because, you know,
Yes, I agree.
yeah. So
My personal opinion of that is that I think universities should have a year travelling or a year life experience in general before they go to university. All my friends that went right to university from school hate what they do because they don't
Right.
know what life's like. They don't understand it. So I think it's a requirement. I think it should be enforced in order to get to anything in life.
Yeah. And when you get to another place that's so different that it starts to interfere with your idea of reality, it hurts and it's painful and there's kind of a trauma involved, but I think it's so good for people. It's so good because, I mean, why condition yourself to believe something that's not even true? You know, like
Yes.
we're in China and the culture is like upside down. I mean, it's totally different than what you're used to, but you realize this thing that the world is not the way that I thought it was. And I think,
Yes.
and if that's true, it's a good thing to know, you know?
Yes. And I think it's good because with people in China, they just accept this belief. And I think with us going in and saying, oh, I don't like how this world is, it's kind of good to know traveling that this isn't the only culture and the only world out there. There's other options there
Right.
to go and travel. I think everybody, because it's easier than you think traveling. I keep saying that to everyone. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And do it before you get tied down to anything. I speak from experience.
Yes.
Do it before you get tied down, because it gets much harder when you've got to support, you know, if you want to travel with kids. That's what this channel started out about, you know, traveling with kids. If you want to travel with a wife and travel with kids, it's a lot harder. And you also care about the conditions you live in a lot more when you have a kid. So
Yeah, that's true.
your standards are higher. All right, though, I got to go. It was good talking to you. For everybody that's watching, this is Darren
Hello.
Stewart. Darren Stewart.
Yes, that's right. Darren Stewart.
From Scotland.
Yes.
I'm Richard. Thank you for watching Travelogues. We'll see you next time.